Today was really hectic. Heaving out a tired sigh, Ryan rose from the chair and started packing her stuff to call it a day. All I want to do is go home and sleep soundly, she murmured with a pout as the sight of warm and comforting mattress made her feel more tired than she already was. She was done packing her stuff and all set to leave, but the shrill sound of her phone ringtone echoed through the serene silence of night. She frowned, seeing an unknown number displaying on the screen. As much as she wanted to ignore the call due to tiredness, she decided otherwise, swiped the green button and held it close to her ear. Yes, she softly spoke and waited for the response from the other side. Am I talking to Miss Lee Wyan? A sweet, melodious voice reached her ears. She hummed and bobbed her head. Yes. How may I help you? She whispered. The exhaustion in her voice was clearly evident. I am Park Jamin, Jungkook's friend. The crease on her forehead disappeared hearing the familiar name, and she sighed before asking, what did he do this time? You seem to know him really well. Anyways, I know it's quite late, but can you come to his house? He has been creating a mess for like an hour. His voice didn't hide the concern behind his words. One glanced at her wristwatch, which clicked 15 past 10. Okay, I'll be there in a while, she replied after a pause and heard a sigh from other side. Thanks, and sorry for disturbing you. She let out a throaty hum and hung up. Grabbing her bag and car keys, she exited her office. Driving towards her destination, Ryan's mind was preoccupied with Jungkook's thoughts. He was forced to seek help from a psychotherapist because of his extreme anger issues, and that's when he collided with Ryan. He was her client since last 3 months. Initially, he was very rude with her, but as the time passed, he started listening to her and had a good development in managing his anger. He was doing good, but what happened to him suddenly? Sighing out on her thoughts, she pressed her foot on accelerator, sped up the car to reach at his mansion as soon as possible. Stepping inside the John mansion, she came across a tense Jamin who was pacing around the living room. Amidst the silent ambience of the house, she could hear the faint sound of glass breaking, which was coming from upstairs. Wine, he called out as soon as he noticed her standing there. She nodded and stepped towards him. What happened? I don't know. We were working in our office and he got a call. After that, he came back here fuming in anger, and since then he has been breaking things. He explained briefly. Didn't you try to stop him? No, I didn't. He is angry and I don't want to be the victim of his anger. I don't trust my anger. I would have broken his nose or something. He casually said and shrugged his shoulder. Wyan gaped at him in disbelief. Are you a mafia too? He nodded with a smile. Wyan shook her head and wondered why she wasn't surprised. Why don't you tag along with him on therapies? I think you also need it. She offered a suggestion with a tight lipped smile. He chuckled and shook his head. No, I am fine like this. Besides, I know how to control my anger unlike him. But if you want to see me, I'll come with him or without him too. He smirked slightly with mischief twinkling in his eyes. Vian squinted her eyes at him. Pressing her index finger on his forehead, she pushed him back. I'm going to check up on him. She gave him a fake smile and made her way upstairs towards his bedroom. Opening the door of his bedroom, Vian's eyes widened in horror when a vase came flying in her direction. She immediately bent down and successfully dodged it. She closed her eyes when the vase shattered, colliding with the wall behind. Inhaling a good amount of air, she stood upright and looked at the mess closing the door behind. The once tidy bedroom was a complete mess with broken glass littered on floor, disheveled bed sheets, and his clothes scattered around the room. Her eyes traveled from the mess to the one who created this havoc and found his eyes boring holes in her. She crooked her eyebrows, confused by his angry glare pointed at her. What is all this, Mr. John? She hummed for an answer, glancing around the mess before looking back at his eyes. He scoffed, and without giving any response, he walked towards the big wooden cupboard. Opening the glass door of the cupboard, he brought out an expensive wine from his huge wine collection and sat on the couch which was placed nearby. Vine scolded in anger and crossed her arms on her chest. Put that back, she stated sternly, but he royally ignored her and proceeded to pour himself a drink. Didn't you hear me? I said put that back, Jungkook, she stated in no nonsense tone, and he rolled his eyes before keeping the wine bottle aside. Now tell me what happened, she asked gently. She watched him clenching his jaw and he looked away. Fine, if you don't want to tell me. Get up and clean the mess you created. She narrowed her eyes when he didn't make a move to clean up. Get up and clean. Okay, keep up with this attitude. I'm leaving and dare to step inside my office, John Jungkook. I swear I'll kick you where the sun doesn't rise. She threatened and turned to leave but stopped when he spoke. Stop, don't leave. She turned around facing him. Get your up and clean the room now. Without any query, he stood up and went out to bring a vacuum cleaner and broom. Ryan settled down on the couch and silently watched him cleaning his room. After a half an hour long cleaning session, the room was back to being clean but looked a bit empty because the beautiful flower vases weren't there. After completing his task, he quietly sat beside Ryan. His anger had faded away, leaving a restless feeling behind. What happened? She asked, confused by his silence. What were you doing with Vushik in the mall? He asked back, looking at her with different emotions in his eyes. Vushik? Where did he come from in this conversation? She frowned. Just answer the question. He glared at her and she mirrored his expression. Don't talk to me like that. I bumped into him in the mall. He's my old client. We exchanged a few words and that's it. But wait, why am I am telling you all this? She glared at him with the same intensity and his expression softened. You like him? He asked, trying to hide his sadness. Ryan looked at him weirdly. Are you out of your mind? I just told you he is an old client. I don't like him or whatever. And what's with you suddenly interviewing me? He grinned widely and shook his head. Nothing, I'm asking casually. Ryan placed her palm on his forehead to check his temperature. You don't have a fever, then are you pregnant? What? Are you mad? How can I be pregnant? Then are you on your periods? I am a man. Men don't menstruate, he asked, annoyed by her senseless questions. If that's not the case, then you have clearly lost your brain. You need serious medical help. You have become a mental patient, John. What the? I'm not a mental patient or anything. He stood up. Vian pushed herself up the couch and stood before him. But you were behaving like one. One moment you were fuming like a bull, and next moment you were showing your teeth. What is up with you, Mr. Mafia? She raised her eyebrows at him whilst he avoided her gaze and scratched the back of his neck. Oh, actually, Vushik is my rival in both business and mafia world, and you were with him. I don't know, but I didn't like it. He hung his head low and Vine bit back a smile that was threatening to form on her lips and cleared her throat. Why is that? Isn't it so that you start liking me? She teased with a mischievous smile adorning her lips. I think you should go home. It's late. He jumped on his bed and covered himself with the duvet completely. Vine chuckled, noticing the cruel mafia being nervous and exited the room. Vine was in her office reading a human psychology book when suddenly someone barged inside her office. She looked up and got surprised to see Jungkook. He was shaking with anger. She stood up from her chair. What are you doing here? You don't have any session to. She was cut off when he strode towards her and embraced her tightly yet gently. Her breath hissed when he buried his face in the crook of her neck. A shiver ran down her spine when she felt his cold lip piercing against her warm skin. Gulping down the lump form in her throat, she slowly wrapped her arms around him. He sighed. It tightened his grip around her, leaving no space for air to pass through. He inhaled deeply as her lavender scent calmed his mind. It worked as water on the fire of his anger. The frown on his forehead disappeared as he melted in her comforting warmth. He moved his face back, his hands still keeping her close by holding her waist. What happened? She asked timidly as the warmth of his muscular body still lingering on her body. His hands on her waist didn't help either. Got angry on something but not anymore. He smiled, seeing her flushed face. I told you to drink water or eat something sweet when you get angry. She reminded him. I remember, but I don't need to do that anymore. I got my own calming pill. He smirked and palmed her lower back, yanking her closer. She gasped and twisted his shirt between her palms. Dinner at my place tonight. I'll cook for you. He leaned down and pecked her lips. Her lips parted in shock and she stared at him with wide eyes. I'll wait for you. He pecked her once again and dashed out of there, leaving her a blushing mess. She traced her fingers on her lips and smiled shyly. Then she remembered he had indirectly asked her for a home date. She squealed and hopped in excitement. Oh God, I'm so happy. She did her happy dance. Is it the happiness of asked out on a date, or is it because the one she had grown feeling so reciprocates the same? Whatever it is, it's the most beautiful emotion that they get to feel. And what is more beautiful is the fire of passionate love was blazing equally on both sides.